the crack between Earth and sky in the afternoon of March 28, 2025, when Myanmar trembled. No warning, no physical signs, only something ancient, profound, deeply buried, stirring from the quiet layers of geophysical energy, awakening forgotten connections between humankind and the Earth. No one heard an alarm, but millions of souls felt it, like a cold wave slicing through the chest, moments before the ground began to shake. A 7.7 magnitude earthquake. Geologist Jess Phoenix said it carried the energy of over 300 atomic bombs. But the real destruction wasn't in the soil. It was in the memory of a nation worn down by 4 years of civil war, severed from its own biological rhythm, and cut off from the sacredness of Mother Earth. The collapsing buildings were only the final visible result. What collapsed first was trust, false order, the illusion of stability society clung to just to survive the chaos. In ancient astrology, there are moments when the axes of great planetary forces collide with collective energy fields. When Rahu, the shadow node, passes through the 12th house, everything buried deep in the subconscious begins to rise. The 12th house is not just the realm of the unconscious. It is the gateway of old karma, of sealed secrets spanning lifetimes, of energy long trapped and never released. When Rahu enters this house, all stability is revealed as illusion. Myanmar at that moment was the convergence point. Rahu in the 12th house, Pluto approaching Capricorn, the shadow of the eclipse beginning to stretch like an invisible mist across Southeast Asia. Pluto, the planet of destruction, death, and rebirth, does not rush. But when it nears the backbone signs of astrology like Capricorn, what awakens is no longer mood, it is structure. It peels back layers of the system, from geological strata to political foundations, from the base of buildings to the human heart. And the eclipse shadow, an astronomical phenomenon that may seem distant, becomes the veil that dims consciousness. In that darkness, everything denied will rise, and those with sensitive natal charts will be the first to hear the echo from the Earth's core, even if their ears do not perceive sound. Aries during this time often feel the strongest tremble, not because they are near the epicenter, but because the primal fire within them burns out of rhythm. They feel trapped, irritable, like something is holding them back in a world that demands change but forbids movement. But what they face lies not outside, but in the inner journey of learning how not to react when energy peaks, to stand still amid the tremors and not burn themselves alive. Taurus experiences a gentler quake, but one that sinks deeper. They feel their foundations trembling quietly. Work, health, finances suddenly feel as fragile as a thread pulled too tight. For them, the greatest pain isn't loss. It's not knowing what is solid enough to hold on to. Gemini, those quick thinkers and endless talkers, for the first time, find their questions circling without escape. They spiral through facts, feelings, thoughts, yet nothing touches their innermost being. Because what is vibrating now lies not in knowledge, but in intuition, where the language of the soul begins to name what the mind cannot reach. The Myanmar earthquake wasn't a random slip of tectonic plates. It was the explosive release of an energy stream compressed over generations. When the earth has no room to breathe, it shakes. When the collective soul has no place to hide, it awakens. And if you're living thousands of miles away yet feel a sudden tightness in your chest, a chaos in your heart with no clear cause, that is no coincidence. You are being connected. Because vibration knows no borders, and the crack beneath the earth is a calling on the astrological map of humankind. Fractured emotions and the soul's being called. There are tremors that don't collapse buildings, don't split the ground, yet they stop a soul mid-breath, eyes lifted, asking, what layer of reality am I really living in? The Myanmar earthquake didn't only rupture the geological layer, it opened an invisible fissure in the collective emotional field where logic cannot analyze and instinct can only tremble. Because in astrology, whenever Rahu touches the 12th house and Pluto activates Capricorn, nothing can continue to pretend it's okay. Everything that's been compressed, from unspoken emotions, unhealed wounds, to outdated beliefs rooted too deep, bursts to the surface. And as the total eclipse nears and the sky's light is withdrawn, the shadows within each of us begin to form shape, identity, and voice. In the days before the quake, zodiac elements responded differently, not through logic, but through the energetic codes etched deep within their souls. Fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, felt the first waves. Without knowing why, they began to lose sleep. They grew irritated, short-tempered, ready to explode, as if a fire raged through their bones and no one could put it out. But this fire was not meant for action. It was a call to learn how to stand still within the blaze. Not to run, not to scream, just to witness it until it softened itself. This is the time for fire souls to experience the internalization of power, and for the first time realize sometimes silence is the strongest form of courage. Earth signs Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn show almost nothing on the surface, but inside their foundation is cracking. What they once believed to be certain, secure, is now shifting and warping. Work no longer feels like salvation. Discipline no longer saves them from a sense of disconnection. And when control stops working, only one path remains: surrender. Not giving up, but accepting that what they've been holding onto was never truly solid to begin with. Air signs Gemini, Libra, Aquarius react by spinning in circles of information. They read more, research more, talk more. But the more they understand, the more they feel separated from themselves, because what's happening is beyond the reach of logic. They don't need more analysis, they need silence. Emotions are not resolved through knowledge, but through pure, unconditional presence. Water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, are the ones most deeply shaken. Not in action, but in intuition. They dream strange images. They feel heartache when others laugh. They cry over a breeze. They know something is happening but cannot put it into words, and that is both their gift and their challenge. Because water signs are the first channels of resonance between Earth and humanity, if they dare to feel and not deny, they offer their communities a chance to heal too. When we look at the national astrology chart of Myanmar, we see clearly Rahu is activating the collective shadow, the 12th house, which contains old karma and the unspeakable. At the same time, Mars, the planet of action and raw drive, is squaring Uranus, the planet of lightning, sudden shifts, the unpredictable. This is a textbook astrological configuration for shock events. And then, as Pluto edges closer to Capricorn, the ruler of power, politics, and societal structures, the tremors are not just in the land, but in the systems themselves. Not everyone can feel this, but the most sensitive, those who have been deeply wounded in the past, are the first to know. We are entering a new energetic threshold. A threshold where the old will be peeled away. Every stable system that contradicts life will collapse. From politics to education to how humans build houses and live with one another. If you've ever felt like this, like you're sensing something no one can name, like your heart is trembling in ways you can't explain, then leave a message. You don't have to say much. Just to know you're not alone. Because sometimes a single dot or number left by you is enough to make someone feel they're not walking this journey alone. And if this message touches something deep inside you, don't forget to follow. We are building a space for awakening souls, and you are a part of it. When a building collapses, people can count the floors, the casualties, the shattered bricks. But when an emotional system breaks down in silence, no one can count it. We just know that. We no longer sleep well, nothing feels real anymore, and even a simple meal can leave us choking halfway through for no apparent reason. After every physical tremor comes a spiritual aftershock, but this aftershock doesn't arrive with sound. It arrives as a sensation. The inner world no longer matches the outer one. A dissonance that has no words, only felt through skin, through blurry dreams, through a heartbeat that suddenly races with no medical cause. In astrology, Rahu represents darkness. Not evil darkness, but the parts that have yet to be illuminated, understood, or healed. When Rahu activates the 12th house, everything you've hidden begins to take form. Repressed memories, inherited wounds, collective emotions, all rise to the surface without waiting for your permission. And Pluto, moving slowly like a massive underground train, is the hand that peels away every old layer. It doesn't care whether you're ready. It only cares what within you has expired and needs to die in order to be reborn. That's the moment where transformation begins. You don't need to move forward boldly. You don't need to stay positive. You don't even need to be grateful for the lesson. You only need the courage to face your fear, to admit the emptiness, to cry, not because someone died, but because you've lived too long away from your essence. A Cancer might suddenly cry in the middle of the night, not out of pain, but because they hear sorrows that were never named. A Capricorn might fall ill without explanation because their body, after carrying too much for too long, has finally said no. A Pisces might dream of visions that feel prophetic, as though the universe is sending codes from its depths. An Aquarius might feel an unbearable isolation, as if the world has moved off course and left them behind. Transformation does not arrive like a magical night. It arrives in tiny rhythms. Someone starts going to bed early, not for health, but because their body truly needs rest. Someone places their hand on a tree, not for any reason, just to remember what it feels like to belong. Someone writes a single honest sentence, not for anyone to read, but so they won't forget what they're carrying. Someone sits still for 10 minutes each morning, not to meditate, but to feel. The earth is still turning, and I am still here. Transformation is not a destination. It is a return to the original state your soul once knew, quiet, whole, slow, real. In a physical earthquake, the foundation breaks first. In a spiritual earthquake, the ego collapses first. And what remains is your ability to feel the very small, the very real, the very alive, which you may have forgotten in your years chasing stability. If you no longer feel aligned with the old way of living, try this. You don't need to go to the mountains. You don't need the ocean. Just a roasted sweet potato, a bowl of steamed greens, a slice of fresh ginger in your tea. Things that touch the soil will bring you back to your original biological rhythm, where there are no deadlines, only seasons, where there is no comparison, only sufficiency. Morning is when the earth resets. Don't turn on your phone before looking at the sky. Don't check your email before checking your heartbeat. Step outside if you can, and breathe deeply 3 times. Once for the body, once for the emotions, once for the soul that has slept too long. At night, turn off the screen, not to rest, but to remember. You once knew what silence felt like. Only in darkness can the inner whispers rise, and sometimes that's the only sound you need in an entire noisy day. Clean your space like you're clearing old energy, not for cleanliness, but for clarity. Not because you need it, but because it's time to let go of who you no longer are. A shelf, a drawer, a small cabinet. Wiping away dust is wiping away memory. Burn a stick of incense. Play a 432 Hz track. And let the space teach you how to live again. Write, cry, paint, or sit still. You don't need to be strong. You just need to stop betraying your real feelings. If you're sad, be fully sad. If you're angry, be aware in your anger. If you're tired, stop running, because no one is judging you in your journey back to yourself except the soul that has always walked quietly beside you. Transformation doesn't come like divine light. It comes like a slow, deep, quiet breath. The one where, for the first time, you see your reflection and don't feel afraid. And you'll realize something: the earth is not punishing, the universe is not forcing you. They're only sending an invitation, gentle, soft, for you to return to your original frequency. That frequency where you don't need to try anymore. This message is not for the crowd. It's for those still sitting in the middle of the night, quietly resetting the rhythm of their life without anyone knowing. If you're one of them, just leave a greeting, no need to explain. This space exists for hearts like yours, those who feel enough to sense, brave enough to change direction, and quiet enough not to need noise. Stay, because every time you're present, this community becomes deeper, stronger, more real. The crack is not the end, but a gateway to rebirth. When the earth shakes, everyone looks at where the ground split. But in astrology, we don't look down. We look up, to the sky, to the map of celestial movement, because up there, the planets are drawing each ripple of humanity's evolution, not with fire, not with stone, but with invisible vibrations that stretch across time. Pluto does not come to destroy. It comes to expose Rahu, does not bring misfortune. It opens the gate to what has not been fully seen. An eclipse does not bring darkness. It removes the false light so that the true light inside each of us can rise. And Myanmar, amidst fractured earth, war, poverty, and helplessness, became the first place where the spiritual crack of Southeast Asia surfaced into reality. Not just the houses fell, but the faulty structures of society, the blind faiths, the habits that go against nature, all began to collapse at once. You may be living in the US, in Thailand, in Australia, anywhere, but if you've been unable to sleep lately, if your heart clenches for no reason, if it feels like an invisible broadcast is playing inside you that no one else can hear, then you're not wrong. You are simply being called. Not to panic, not to do anything grand, but to begin living again, in a way you may have forgotten. The crack is not the end, it's the opening, the gap through which real light enters, the space where you, I, and all of humanity can shed the old layer to begin again. And if you still have the courage not to tense up, not to resist the tremor, not to ignore the knocking in your chest, then you have already stepped one foot through the gate. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to do anything grand. If you're still listening, perhaps you're like me, not seeking answers, just seeking a frequency where you can be yourself. This channel doesn't promise to lead the way, but I promise to walk with you through lunar cycles, planetary retrogrades, and sudden tremors. Follow this channel, not for me, but because you need an anchor point, and so do I. Leave your feeling below, because who knows, it might be the awakening someone else has been waiting for. Thank you for staying this far. See you in the next video.